What do you want out of sports? Pure excitement, heroes, underdogs, emotional moments, maybe? Well, the year 2001 provided all of these things through sports and then some. 2001 may have been the single most meaningful year in all of sports, and that's saying something. So many legacies were being formed, so many lessons were taught, and above all else, it was pretty fun. Not just in one particular sport, but in a huge variety of them. So much so that something great will inevitably be left out of this video because there's already so much to tell. There's no one way to go about telling the story, but doing it chronologically is not going to be how we cover it in this video, because that's not the point. We're going to divide the 2001 sports year into three categories: excitement and accomplishments, underdogs, and emotional lessons to prove that this was a very special year. Just going off of how many cool things happened in this year alone makes for a strong list. For starters, Shaq and Kobe were at their most unstoppable point ever. Coming off a championship in 2000, the Lakers won their first 11 playoff games in 2001, easily coasting to the finals against Allen Iverson and the Sixers. The Sixers had to win back-to-back 7-game series against the Raptors and Bucks, but the Lakers were destroying everyone in their path, and they made it fun while they were doing it. Until Game 1 of the finals rolled around. This game got to overtime and the Sixers started to build a lead with under a minute to go. Then, Allen Iverson pulled his most famous move ever, other than saying practice a million times.
Iverson. How about that? Steps over Toronto.
Did you see that? The absolute disrespect in that step over. The Sixers won the game, ending the Lakers' perfect playoff run. But it meant nothing. The Lakers recovered and won 4 straight. Shaq and Kobe won a title for the second year in a row, cementing the duo as one of the best ever. And that 15-1 playoff run was one of the greatest displays of force in basketball history. Just don't ask Kobe about how a basketball can bounce.
How many springs does an official ball have in it?
How many springs? It doesn't have any springs in it.
Well, how does it bounce then?
It's air. There's air in the ball.
Well, there's air in this room. How come this room ain't bouncing?
Moving on from one athlete name-dropped in a Kanye song to another. Barry Bonds single-handedly rewrote baseball's record book in 2001. And it was even more ridiculous than it already was because of what happened in 1998. That year, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa raced for the record of most home runs in a season on a journey to see if someone could hit 70 for the first time ever. McGwire did it, and their chase pulled baseball back into America's hearts after a strike that canceled the '94 World Series broke the country. And only 3 years later, Barry Bonds erased it all. Hitting 73 home runs, getting on base more than half the time he came to the plate, and winning his first of 4 straight MVP awards. These kind of things, they don't happen in baseball. Did I mention he was 37 years old at the time of breaking the home run record? Only 2 men had even reached 60 in a season 4 years earlier. Bonds coasted to 73. Sure, his records aren't taken as seriously today given how baseball views PEDs in the present, but in 2001, it was incredible. There's a debate as to whether or not Barry Bonds is the best baseball player of all time. There's less of a debate that the 2001 Miami Hurricanes were the best college football team in the modern history of the sport. To say that they had a great year would be the biggest understatement ever. It'd be more appropriate to say they beat everyone's brains out. If you had to express just how good this team was in one stat, this is the one. On November 17th and 24th, Miami played Syracuse and Washington. Both of those teams were in the top 15 in the country at the time. Miami won both of those games by a combined score of 124-7. That is the record for consecutive point differential against ranked teams, and they were both in the top 15. Their point differential on the year was 512-117. If you didn't assume this already, they went 12-0 and won the national championship. Only 2 of those games were even kinda close. To drive home how talented this team was, this is a short list of some of the guys who were on it. Frank Gore, Andre Johnson, Clinton Portis, Ed Reed, Vince Wilfork, Jeremy Shockey, Jonathan Vilma, Antrell Roll, Kellen Winslow Jr., Bryant McKinney, and Sean Taylor. All of them were on the same college team. In hockey, the Stanley Cup was a matchup of the two best records in the NHL for the first time since 1989, and that somehow hasn't happened since. The New Jersey Devils matched up against their former city's team, the Colorado Avalanche, and the series lived up to the hype. It was a back-and-forth series all the way, with the Devils taking a 3-2 lead with a shot to win their third cup in 10 years. But then the Avalanche pounded the Devils to earn a Game 7, which they won. It was Colorado's second in 5 years, adding to their franchise legacy and poetically getting Colorado even with the Devils for leaving town. The Devils didn't have to suffer too long though. See, everyone's happy. By 2001, Tiger Woods was already the face of golf, but he added to his resume with an accomplishment no one had ever earned before. He became the first golfer to win all 4 major golf titles consecutively. They called it the Tiger Slam. Golf is not as easy as it looks. For most people, it takes a lifetime to perfect their swing, but Tiger was like, bet, and became the unquestioned best golfer on planet Earth as a 25-year-old. Baseball teams very rarely break the 105 win barrier. For 95 years, the 1906 Cubs held the record with 116, and no one matched them. Every great baseball team since failed to win 116 games in the regular season. Then came the Seattle Mariners. Over the last 3 years before 2001, they lost 3 superstars: Randy Johnson, Ken Griffey Jr., and Alex Rodriguez. But they somehow did it. 116 wins, which is just insane in baseball. The bigger question is how, especially without their franchise icons who are still having great years elsewhere. Well, meet our first underdog of 2001. Ichiro Suzuki was the very first Japanese hitter in MLB history, and no one really knew what to expect of him. In spring training he showed flashes, but there were still whispers that his skill set wouldn't translate in the States. His manager Lou Piniella supposedly went up to him one time and outright demanded to see him pull the ball, something he wasn't really known for as a singles hitter. Ichiro then said, "Say less," and hit 3 nukes over the right field fence. It was kind of like that scene in Chicken Little where he got a hit and no one could really believe it. That kind of thing happened all year. Ichiro was fun, and he took the major leagues by storm. Not just because he was surpassing basic expectations, but because he was one of the best players in all of baseball immediately. He could hit, he could run, and he could throw, to the point where he may have been the best at all of those things from the second he stepped foot in Seattle. He won Rookie of the Year and AL MVP in 2001, forcing former pitcher Rob Dibble to get an interesting Ichiro tattoo. But even with Ichiro and their record-tying season, the Mariners failed to get to the World Series. They haven't even been to the playoffs since. But one thing's for sure, Ichiro was here to stay. March Madness is an obvious time for underdogs to rise up, and in 2001, they did. A bunch of them, in fact. 2 12 seeds and 2 13 seeds won in the first round. Gonzaga got to the Sweet 16 as a double-digit seed for the 3rd year in a row. Temple was an 11 seed and they got to the Elite 8. But no underdog was like the 15 seed Hampton Pirates. 2001 was their very first time in March Madness, and they were matched up against 2-seeded Iowa State in the first round. Down by as much as 11 in the game, Hampton looked dead in the water. Until... Now with just under 12 seconds in the game, Hampton has the ball and a chance to win.
Inside, the big fella. Williams! Iowa State pushing, time running down. Tinsley off the iron. It's over. Oh my God. It's over.
They were the last 15 seed to advance in the tournament for over a decade. The Hampton Pirates' magical win is their only tournament win in history outside of the first 4, and it came like that. On March 3rd, John Ruiz became the first Latino heavyweight champion of boxing. He beat Evander Holyfield after previously losing to him in a controversial fight in 2000. Out of all the great Latino boxers before him, like Oscar De La Hoya, Roberto Duran, Julio Cesar Chavez, and Juan Manuel Marquez, it was Ruiz who was the first Latino heavyweight champ. His nickname was also the Quiet Man, which for some reason I personally really like. On Sunday, September 23rd, the Jets faced the Patriots in Foxborough. The Jets won that game technically, but they lost, and so did most other teams in the NFL. That's partially because Jets linebacker Mo Lewis clocked Patriots quarterback Drew Bledsoe. Bledsoe was replaced that day by a 6th round draft pick from the year before, and the Jets proceeded to create a monster they could never really fight. That 6th round draft pick? Tom Brady, whose legacy really began in 2001. He led the Patriots to an AFC East title in 2001, and in February of 2002, won his very first Super Bowl. Because of course he did. This for a team that had never won the Super Bowl, and was predicted by a writer to go 0-16 after Bledsoe went down. But arguably the most compelling underdog of all was emerging in the Bronx. A left-handed kid named Danny Almonte was about to pitch in the Little League World Series, and take over the world while he was at it. What you're seeing is a kid pitch a 6-inning perfect game with 16 strikeouts. At 5'8" and throwing 75 miles per hour, which is the same as 102 for the distance a big league hitter is from the pitcher, he was terrifying for 12-year-olds to face.
Danny Almonte in his last 16 innings pitched, that's 48 potential outs, has 43 strikeouts.
His team didn't win the championship, but that wasn't his fault. He struck out 62 of the 72 batters he faced, and only gave up 3 hits in 3 starts with no earned runs. Being a kid and trying to get a hit off Danny Almonte was kinda like trying to beat B-Rabbit in a rap battle. Danny was beloved. The Yankees honored him and his teammates before one of their games. The mayor of New York City even gave them the key to the city, but it all came crashing down, which teaches us the first lesson 2001 had to offer. Danny's success came with a huge catch. He ended up being 2 years older than the age limit. The reveal was no fault of his own. Danny didn't speak English, and supposedly didn't know any of this was going on. As a Dominican immigrant who only came to the US a year earlier, this was all the grown-ups' fault. Using fake documents and corruption to get him on the team, it was every terrible stereotype about adults ruining kids' sports come to life. Sports are supposed to be pure, and we're supposed to be decent human beings when facilitating them. And all those who exploited this innocent kid for their own gain, there's no way to spin how unethical that was. On February 18th, NASCAR legend Dale Earnhardt passed away from injuries sustained in a crash during a race. It was the final lap of the Daytona 500, and it sent major aftershocks through the racing world. His death was a direct cause of auto racing making safety a greater priority in the sport. Life isn't always fair. An icon of a sport died while partaking in it. But how the world honors your memory and takes initiative to preserve your legacy and prevent others from facing the same fate matters too. Then, September 11th happened. There are no real words to describe the immediate fallout from that day. The world changed, but it showed how people can rise up and do some good in the face of tragedy. And sports provide a great outlet for that. Shortly after the attacks, Michael Jordan announced his return to basketball after 3 years of retirement. Why? So he could donate his salary to the relief efforts. Because that's what heroes do. And his return was a much-needed boost of life for basketball fans in America. But New Yorkers obviously needed more. And the Yankees going back to the World Series helped the city move forward. The President of the United States threw out the first pitch at Game 3 at Yankee Stadium. And the series was amazing. Let's take you to Game 7 in Arizona. Yankees are up 2-1 headed to the bottom of the ninth. The greatest relief pitcher ever is on the mound to finish off the series. The Yankees winning the World Series would be a great symbol of hope for this city that went through so much. But it slipped away.
Floater, center field, the Diamondbacks are world champions!
It wasn't to be, because sometimes the storybook ending isn't there. However, let's go back 6 weeks. Shea Stadium in Queens. The Mets and the Braves are gonna do something that seems impossible. Play baseball in New York 10 days after the unthinkable happened. I get emotional just watching the pre-game ceremony from that night. I can't even begin to think about what those people in the stands are feeling. It's the bottom of the 8th inning. The Braves are up 2-1, and Mike Piazza's gonna hit as the go-ahead run. And he's gonna do something unbelievable.
Lopez wants it away. And it's hit deep to left center. Andrew Jones on the run. This one has a chance. Home run! Mike Piazza, and the Mets lead 3-2.
Mike Piazza just made this crowd cheer and smile 10 days after having their worlds flipped completely upside down. First responders, people who lost loved ones, they're happy, and sports can do that. Sports have this knack for being there for you when you need them. That is easily the most important lesson of this incredible year, and the perfect takeaway to end this video on. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed.